Chapter 1. The Ridge-Marrow Glen was the kind of town where secrets grew roots. Nestled between thick forests and flanked by the looming Auvin ridge, it seemed frozen in time. Locals didn't talk about the ridge much. The older generation would touch their foreheads, mutter a prayer and change the subject. Tourists thought it charming until night fell and the woods began to hum. Erica Lorne wasn't from Marrow Glen. None of them were. She and 4 fellow graduate students had arrived in a beat-up van, loaded with seismographs, rock corers, and youthful overconfidence. Their professor, Dr. Kellen Muir, had obtained a grant to explore the unexplored, a patch of rock formations that satellite imagery marked as geologically impossible. Pre-Cambrian distortion zones, he'd called them. Completely out of place. Impossible. So, naturally, we go. The townsfolk offered only vague warnings. An old woman in the diner refused to fill their coffee until they swore not to stay overnight on the ridge. Erica laughed it off. Just local superstition, she'd whispered to Mark, her boyfriend and team technician. But that night, as the group ascended the winding path to the summit, the air grew dense. Even the birds fell silent. Their camp was set just below the crest, a clear area surrounded by pine and shale. That first evening was uneventful. They mapped rock formations, took samples, and joked around the fire. But as darkness sank its teeth into the woods, something shifted. A strange buzzing echoed faintly beneath their boots, too steady to be wind, too organic to be mechanical. Chapter 2. The Hollow. By the second morning, the buzzing beneath the earth had grown stronger, though only some of them admitted to noticing it. Erica described it as a faint hum in her jaw, like the resonance from a tuning fork pressed to bone. Mark heard it too, but only when he lay still in his tent. The others chalked it up to altitude or nerves. Dr. Muir dismissed it entirely. Their work began early. Mark and Jenny, a geophysics grad with a penchant for folklore, took seismic readings along the north-facing slope. "The ground here," Jenny said, frowning at her screen, "shouldn't be this hollow." She tapped the device. "It's like there's a cavern, or something else just beneath the ridge." Muir's eyes gleamed at that. "Excellent. That's our next target." The team started clearing brush and loose shale around the northern edge. By afternoon, they uncovered a smooth surface, too smooth to be natural. Stone, but shaped. Weathered, yet unmistakably cut by hands long gone. Lines of strange symbols curved along it, not etched, but embedded, as though grown into the stone. Erica crouched close. The longer she looked, the more the symbols seemed to twist, almost writhe. That night, the fire burned low. No one wanted to admit how unsettled they felt. The woods pressed in tighter, the stars obscured by a veil of moving mist that hadn't been there before. Muir spent hours sketching the symbols into his notebook, muttering to himself in what sounded like Latin, but not quite. When the wind picked up around midnight, it carried a sound unlike anything they'd heard before, distant, deep, and layered, like a chorus speaking in reverse. Erica clutched Mark's arm. "Did you hear that?" she whispered. But Mark just stared into the dark, eyes glassy. Chapter 3. Erica disappears. The next morning, Erica was gone. Her sleeping bag was empty, tent flap torn open, boots missing, no signs of a struggle, no footprints leaving camp. Mark tore through the trees calling her name until his voice cracked. Jenny found one of Erica's earrings, snagged on a branch far from the Camp S perimeter. It was warm to the touch, as if it had just been worn. They searched for hours, each taking different paths, except Dr. Muir, who stayed behind, obsessively sketching the uncovered stone. He claimed Erica was fine. Sleepwalking, perhaps. "The ridge is revealing things to her," he said, smiling. "It's part of the process. It chose her first." That afternoon, they found Erica. She was standing barefoot in a clearing beyond the ridge, her back to them, whispering. Jenny approached slowly, her voice trembling. "Erica, are you hurt?" Erica turned, slowly. Her eyes were wide and unfocused, her lips still moving. A string of numbers poured from her mouth, 12 digits over and over. Her feet were covered in dry blood. Her expression never changed. They got her back to camp, but she refused food, wouldn't speak anything but the numbers, which now Mark had begun mumbling in his sleep as well. The buzz in the ground was louder than ever, and at dusk, a crack formed in the stone ruin they'd uncovered. A thin line, as though something beneath was stirring. Chapter 4. The chanting below. By the time the crack in the stone widened into a jagged seam, the group had stopped pretending things were normal. They barely spoke. No one dared suggest going back down the mountain. The path had become shrouded in mist, too thick to see through, even in daylight. The GPS units spun endlessly, never locking onto a signal. At night, the air grew too still, too quiet. The usual forest sounds were gone, replaced by a low vibration that filled the lungs and made sleep feel like drowning. Then just past midnight, the chanting began. It started low, a deep, rhythmic intonation that seemed to come from beneath the ridge. Not human voices, not exactly. Layered and ancient, like stone remembering how to speak. Jenny tried to record it. Her microphone picked up nothing. But when she played it back, they heard a different sound entirely. A child's laughter echoing behind static, followed by a single word in a language none of them could identify. The same word appeared the next morning, scratched into the frost on the inside of Mark's tent. Dr. Muir insisted they stay. "This is monumental," he said. "We are not just discovering lost architecture. We are standing on the threshold of something that predates human thought. The ridge isn't natural, it's a shell, and it's cracking." That afternoon they found the stairs, not dug, not carved, grown. Descending from the edge of the cracked ruin was a spiral of steps that hadn't been there the day before. Each step shimmered faintly, as though resisting visibility. Erica walked to the edge of them without hesitation. "It's open now," she said. "We can't keep it waiting." Chapter 5. Descent. Dr. Muir insisted on descending first, Erica behind him, still whispering those same 12 digits in a monotone loop. Jenny and Mark followed, while Adam, the final student, silent since the second day, stayed behind to monitor the surface camp. The steps grew colder with each turn, the walls narrowing and pulsing faintly, with the same wrong geometry as the outer ruin. They descended for what felt like hours. The passage twisted in ways that shouldn't have been possible, turns that led upward, somehow bent downward, corners that looped into themselves, and doorways that moved when you blinked. Their lights dimmed with every step, not from failing batteries, but as if the air itself refused to reflect light. At the bottom, they found a chamber. It was spherical and immense, its ceiling lost in darkness. Floating in its center was a monolith, black stone, spinning slowly, covered in the same symbols as above. Beneath it was a pool of dark liquid, thick and still. Erica walked toward it, arms raised. Her voice changed then, no longer speaking numbers, but chanting. Dr. Muir dropped to his knees, laughing and sobbing at once. "We've done it," he whispered. "We've heard its name." Jenny grabbed Mark's arm and turned to run, but the steps behind them had vanished, replaced by a smooth, pulsing wall. Chapter 6. The Feeding. Jenny pounded her fists against the wall where the staircase should have been, but it gave only slightly, like skin stretched over muscle. Mark stared in horror as the surface rippled beneath her hands. Behind them, the chanting grew louder, deeper, layered with thousands of voices echoing from nowhere. Erica floated inches above the black pool, arms outstretched, eyes glowing faintly white. The monolith rotated faster, symbols glowing now, with dull red light. With each turn, the ground trembled, as if responding to a heartbeat buried in the mountain. Dr. Muir laughed again, high and thin. "It's waking. It remembers us. It forgives." Then the pool began to rise, not splash, not spill, rise like smoke in reverse, forming shapes that were almost human, almost faces, writhing in the air. One form reached Erica and touched her chest. Her body convulsed. She let out a scream that fractured into 100 voices at once. Her skin began to peel in thin ribbons, drifting upward into the monolith like offerings. Jenny screamed. Mark pulled her away, backing into the wall that now pulsed like a living thing. The shapes in the air hissed and turned. One lunged toward Mark and stopped. It hovered inches away, twitching, vibrating like a string pulled too tight. It recoiled. The entity didn't want Mark. Not yet. Chapter 7. The Survivor. When Mark awoke, he was alone. The chamber was silent. The monolith was gone. The pool had evaporated, leaving only a dry stain that smelled of sulfur and rot. There was no sign of Erica or Dr. Muir. The wall behind him had softened again, its texture more like old leather now. Where he pressed his hand, it yielded and opened slowly, revealing the staircase newly reformed. He didn't remember climbing. One moment he was staring down the spiral, the next he was outside, atop the ridge, alone in the morning fog. The campsite was in ruins, tents shredded, journals soaked, electronics dead, no sign of Jenny, only Adam remained. Sitting in the dirt, his eyes white and unblinking, mouth locked in a silent scream. Mark ran. He stumbled down the trail, driven more by instinct than memory, until the mist began to thin and the forest resumed its normal sounds. Birds, insects, wind. By the time he reached Marrow Glen, he was covered in dried blood and mumbling Erica's numbers under his breath. He collapsed in the center of town, screaming until the local police sedated him. Chapter 8. Aftermath. Mark Pike, formerly Adrian Mark Pike, was placed in the psychiatric wing of Aldercrest Institute. He refused food, spoke only in fragments, repeated the 12-digit sequence when agitated, over and over. On good days he would draw circles, monoliths, eyes without faces. On the wall beside his bed, he had scrawled hundreds of symbols in charcoal and spit, most too complex to match any known language. Only one phrase ever appeared in English. Auvin Ridge breathes, and it's hungry. 3 months later, seismic activity was recorded near Marrow Glen. Strange, considering the region had no fault lines. A hunter disappeared near the ridge. Then, a pair of hikers. The town sheriff cordoned off the mountain, but the fog never lifted. In time, locals stopped warning visitors. They stopped speaking of the ridge altogether. They simply stayed indoors when the mist came down and listened to the chanting echo through the trees. Years passed. The mountain remained. Marrow Glen dwindled, businesses shuttered, homes abandoned. The fog came more often now, sometimes for days. The trees at the base of the ridge began to twist unnaturally, leaning toward the summit like worshippers kneeling in prayer. No one spoke of the missing anymore. No one dared. Deep beneath Auvin Ridge, something ancient and patient stirred. It did not sleep. It remembered the taste of fear, of voices offered in darkness, of worship through blood and silence, and soon it would call again. Enjoyed this tale of creeping dread and ancient horror. Don't miss the next descent into darkness. Subscribe now for more original horror stories, unsettling legends, and cosmic nightmares that will follow you into your sleep. Dare to keep reading, if you think you can. Follow and subscribe for more horror stories. Your scream is just the beginning.